we go. It's recording.
Great.
And in the studio with John Birdsong, and the basic question is, being that you have worked now for 4 years, I think 4 almost, no, 3?
With you guys?
Yes.
2
years.
2 plus.
2 years.
2 solid years.
With Handman. With
right.
Handman. And the thing which we've discovered is that there are a number of different vernaculars, or should we say, products that you get out, and the way you treat the product. I mean, the product is, let's say, video. We're using YouTube as our what is it? The other one, Vimeo, and Ustream. But we're also looking at the act of art and where it happens. But it's also irresistible to talk about news, the concept of news, and that in a way you're newsmakers or news builders or news interpreters. Can you elaborate on that in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that we've been doing is, documenting a lot of different things that occur here at the hotel, and different conferences and different events that we're involved with. Also, like all these wonderful performances that come through the lab gallery. And I mean, I do think that documentary is a bit of a, I mean, I guess news is maybe a conglomeration of a lot of these documents, but I definitely do think that documentary is part of, the news-making product, or news itself. Maybe it's a little bit more longer format than the news is. I feel like the news, you watch a newscast, I feel like it's quick. It's almost headline based. There's not much more time, in a newscast than to tell, just the edges of the story. Whereas in a documentary, you can explore a little bit more.
So at least part of what you're doing is documentarianism. What is it? What are you making documentaries?
Yeah.
So that when you take
documentary filmmaking, if you want to call it, yeah.
Documentary filmmaking. Good. And can you say anything about documentary filmmakers? Let's say about yourself as a documentary filmmaker. What's your objective? Do you have a bias? Do you take a bias?
I don't know that I would say that I take a deliberate bias, but I think that probably everyone who tells a story does have a bias, because you are the own product of your own, environment, your imagination, everything about you that's happened leading up to this point sort of makes you who you are. So, but I wouldn't say that I take a deliberate bias, no. But I do try to keep an open mind when I tell a story.
Well, everybody.
But sometimes the story tells itself. That's another thing, that sometimes you're in the moment and you just happen to be observing what's going on. You don't even really I mean, it just happens. Things just happen. In real life, that's what it is. In
a way, just the act of being a documentarian means that you're actually part of the story. You're part of the history. As soon as you're saying it, you
right.
become part of the story itself by telling the story.
Right.
Could that be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something that I think someone like Hunter S. Thompson really was looking at with the idea of gonzo journalism, where the journalist or documentarian, or they inject themselves into whatever they're doing, because how can you not do that? How you are where you are. You're talking to the people involved, in the story, and so it's almost a little bit less valid if you don't inject yourself into the story somehow. I mean, I think of the, you know, someone like you know, a National Geographic wildlife documentarian who sees a starving animal or like an injured animal and does nothing to help that. I see that as being totally wrong and actually not very truthful, because there is someone behind the camera. You do have feelings. You do have.
Well, that famous photograph of the guy shooting the Vietnamese guy shooting the other guy.
Sure.
And the filmmaker has no choice to help him.
That right there is I feel like if you look, especially now, if you look at the current sort of like news making, it's very opinionated. You know, it's very editorialized. So to not inject yourself, like to not try to stop that, you know, or you know, like if you're talking about someone being killed, or you know, I mean, I guess that's your choice. You know, there are different ways of doing things. People do things differently.
The nature of news is what we're posing, because it may be that there was a snowstorm in New York, and you could watch the snow falling, and you could see people's reactions. That would be a form of news. But if you are interviewing someone about ideas, what's that? Yeah,
I mean, ideas are
like a Paris Review, if you will, where you have storytellers telling stories, or essayists writing essays about people, and so, well, what is that all called? And
yeah, I mean, I think what you're doing there, I mean, you're less, you're really documenting, you know, cultural kind of like ideas, evidence, happenings. I mean, these are the kind of like even everyday things that you know, that people would forget, I think, if someone wasn't there to record some of that stuff. And I mean, they're the trivial things, I think, that in, you know, 1 year and 5 years and 50 years, and like you'll see this stuff and you'll look back, if you were involved in the making of it, or even if you're just a you know, lover of poetry or art, you know, you'll see this stuff and you know, it will be valid, I think, even then. So I do think that it's important to, you know, not only to tell, you know, these like stories that are seem important to you now, but also the stories that don't necessarily seem that important, because they're, you know, the things that happen every day, and they sort of add up, and it's an interesting way, I think, to think about life as well. You know, to think about like each day is just an addition to the collective that is time and that is your life. And yeah, it's deep.